Hi guys, there's lots of us out here making face masks because of Covid-19. I spent a bit of time looking at different types and reading up about materials and looking at some of the research, and this is the method that I've chosen to use. So I start with a cardboard template, which is the main piece of cotton material that I use. It's 21.5 centimetres wide and 40.5 centimetres long. So I use this for cutting out my pieces of material. At the moment here I've got a double layer of some quite funky farmhouse curtains. So good ordinary cotton that's been washed, and you can either use dressmaker scissors or one of these amazing circular cutters, which are super sharp, so do keep the guard on when you're not using it. I'm going to demonstrate using this. I have actually already cut this out so that I know it'll work, but basically you run the blade along the side of the template, it rollers along. I have a hard piece of craft plastic underneath, cutting mat rather, so that I'm not damaging whatever's underneath. So you roller along, roller along, roller along, pull your guard back over, remove your template and peel away what will now be two pieces of material. So that's the first stage. So the next stage, where you've got two bits of fabric, because I cut through two at a time, you now need to iron them good side to good side, lengthwise, so it makes a square. So just a nice firm iron. These ones are already ironed. I'll just do one more. And then we need to mark out where the pocket or hole is going to be for being able to insert a piece of lining material, filter of whatever sort you choose to use. So on my original template, widthways, I've marked where the pocket will be, which is a 7.5 centimetre opening. So you've got the fold here, ends to end here, and we're just going to mark with a little marker pencil exactly where that opening is going to be, ready for the next stage when we sew to that marker, leave an opening and sew to that marker, which we'll demonstrate in a moment. So now we're at the sewing machine stage. I have my the fold on this side, I have my marked pocket openings on this side. So put my foot down. In order to sort of seal the edges, I tend to sew backwards and then forwards. And again, where I'm stopping, do a little bit of reverse stitching, a bit of forward stitching, trim off those threads. They should be nicely sealed in, and then we go to the next pocket marker, needle in and stitch to the end and trim off those loose threads and the original threads at the start. Okay, this is now ready to be ironed open. So we're putting the seam right to the center where the fold was at each side, and we will be ironing this open like so. So here we are at the ironing board, and as I showed at the sewing machine, you line up the seam where your fold is and where your fold is, and then open out that seam and iron it flat like so. So you can see you've got your pocket opening. If you were being meticulous, you could hem this seam with a line of stitching along, or 3-step zigzag down each of these seams to just prevent any fraying. So far I've found that even with washing and reusing the mask, it's fine, and we're aiming really for speed. So the next stage, when you've got your nicely ironed open seam, is to measure out your elastic ear loops. This is a 5mm wide elastic, and we need to measure the pieces to be 17.5 centimeters long. So just to make it easy for myself, I've put a marking on the template so I know exactly what length I'm doing. So I tend to cut a load of these ready when I'm doing a batch of masks. So you just need 2 per mask, and those have now got to be pinned into position. So we line up with the top corner like so and pin it in place. And then making sure you've not actually twisted your piece of elastic, so it's coming down to the bottom corner, which it won't reach very easily, so it is a bit of a fiddle to get it into position. There we go, and then pin. And then we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I rotate it round, place the top corner in, secure it with a pin, check it's not twisted, that it still lays flat, into the last corner, like so, with a pin. There we go. Okay, so we're back at the sewing machine, and we're going to secure those little loops of elastic and seal each side of the face mask. You have to be a little bit careful that you don't catch your elastic in the process of sewing down. So I'm very aware that I can feel it here. So down goes the needle, and I can whip out that pin. And as before, we do forwards, backwards to secure it in place. I'm stopping part way because I need to yank that elastic down this way in order to be able to hold the rest of my fabric flat and in position, and it's well out of the way. And there we have one side. In order to reduce the bulk a little, as well as snipping off those loose threads, we also just trim off a little bit of bulk from each end, and also from this extra seam we have here, just cut a little triangle. Careful not to catch any of the stitching, and this will make it less bulky when you turn it out the right way. So I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side, but I will have less manoeuvrability because that end's closed, so I have to put my finger in the pocket to hold the elastic out of the way, which will make sense as I sew. Again, I'm pulling that elastic out of the way. If need be, I can go in the pocket and pull it out of the way as well, so that we don't get And there we have it. Again, I'm going to take a little bit of the bulk away, all the same places as before, and trim off those threads, and then we're ready to pull everything through that little hole. This is the fun bit, when you get to pull the elastics and it starts to look vaguely like a face mask. There we go. Okay, so we've pulled our face mask out with the elastics. You might find that the corners need a little bit of a teasing to get them out square. So just take a few moments to pull those out. That looks fine. So I've placed it so the pocket's on the back, and I'm just going to give it a little iron to smoothen out those seams, sort of dodging the elastic. and trying not to burn myself as well. Okay, and then the next stage is to put a pipe cleaner in the top edge on this side so that we can create a nose band and give it a bit more structure. So these are just standard pipe cleaners. I fold them in half and then fold over the sharp end and give it a good twist together at the top. And then for extra security, I like to just tape that end with a small amount of micropore tape. So there's no chance of that tiny sharp bit coming through. And then we twizzle this together, like so. And it'll need inserting in the pocket hole to get it up into the top. A little bit of manipulation, because we want it running right along that top edge. And then we want to do a line of stitching to hold that in place. So for now, I'm going to pin it in position. And then we need to form our 3 pleats that are going to give the mask the structure and the ability for it to spread over the nose and under the chin. Now, I do it freehand because, to be honest, I found that by trying to use a template and mark it and get it right was no better than simply forming my 3 pleats. So just, use your judgment, use your eye, go with the flow. They haven't got to be perfect as long as you get your 3 pleats. And this is when the fabric becomes quite bulky because we've got this seam in the middle. So I managed to get my pleats like so, using the middle as a guide for the second pleat. This is probably the most fiddly part of the mask making. But what's great is this will be the last stage of sewing. Before you know it, you've got your end product. Sometimes you get a lovely bit of the pattern coming through as well. I'm afraid that this time this one's quite plain. And there we go, ready for the next stage of sewing. So we now have our pinned pipe cleaner in position and our pinned pleats. And we're actually going to be stitching around the perimeter of the mask to form the final piece. So I'm aiming to stitch quite close to the pipe cleaner to keep it secure in position. Removing my pin as I go. And I'm aiming for my stitching down the pleated side to be pretty close to the edge in order to hold the pleats in a good position. And now this is going to be a little bit noisy because it's quite a lot of bulk, so bear with me. There we go, I'm down to the bottom edge. And again, I can do a line of stitching along here because it gives it structure and strength. So where it sits underneath the chin, it's not flopping. And turning to go down the last side of pleats, again close to the edge. Stitch for luck, and then we trim off any loose threads, aiming not to trim the ear elastic at the same time. That would be a bit of a disaster, dare I say I haven't done so far. And then we remove those pins, absolutely making sure you have removed the pins. You don't want to be giving somebody a mask with pins. And there you have your end product. Now what's important is that the pleats go downwards from the nose piece so that you're not collecting debris in the folds when it's worn. You then on this side have your opening. So if people choose to put a filter, a piece of interface or whatever woven fabric inside, they have that opportunity and choice to do so. So for fitting your mask, ideally you shouldn't be handling it as much as I'm doing so, but I'm just going to demonstrate briefly how it fits over the nose, pushing down, slip your ear, and then tuck this under the chin so it fits securely for your shape. And there you go.